I took a job as a house sitter. But my employer only exists after dark. The job paid well. That alone would have been enough to overlook the rest. The estate lay at the end of a long gravel drive that curved out of sight before revealing the house all at once. Stone, tall windowed, and set too far from the road to feel connected to anything living. The trees surrounding it leaned inward, their branches weaving together in a way that kept the grounds dim, even under a clear sky. The instructions had been simple. Stay on the property, oversee the services, feed the carp in the courtyard pond, do not enter the west wing before sunset. That last line had been underlined twice, as though repetition might be mistaken for importance. My days settled quickly into a quiet, predictable rhythm. On Mondays, the cleaning service arrived. 2 women who moved efficiently from room to room, speaking only when necessary, their voices low and indistinct. Their footsteps were soft against the floors, practiced in a way that suggested familiarity with the house, though they never lingered longer than required. They worked around the west wing without ever acknowledging it, as if that part of the estate did not exist. On Thursdays, the lawn crew came. The low, steady hum of machinery broke the silence for a few hours before fading again, leaving the grounds restored to their careful stillness. No one stayed longer than they had to. No one asked questions. "You here long?" one of the gardeners asked me once, wiping his hands on his pants as he glanced toward the house. "A few months," I replied. He nodded, as though that answer settled something for him. "Good," he said, then paused, his gaze shifting briefly back to me. "Keep to your hours." I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" But he only shrugged, already turning away, calling out to the others as though the conversation had ended before it had properly begun. The rest of the time it was just me, and the house. It was too large to feel empty in any comforting way. Even during the day, when light filtered through the tall windows and stretched across the floors in long pale bands, there remained a sense that something had been withheld. The rooms were orderly, untouched, yet never quite at ease. There were moments when I felt watched, not by anything I could see, but by the quiet itself. Hallways seemed narrower than they should have been, their proportions subtly wrong, as though they shifted when I wasn't looking directly at them. Doors I was certain I had closed would sit slightly ajar when I passed them again, though I could never remember leaving them that way. By evening, the change became more pronounced. The light faded, and with it, something in the air seemed to thicken. Sounds carried differently. My footsteps echoed where they hadn't before. The silence deepened, not empty, but heavy, as though it were listening. It was not enough to call it fear, but it was enough to make me retreat. After sunset, I kept to my room. It was on the second floor, positioned at the corner of the house where the windows overlooked the courtyard. It caught the most sunlight during the day, and at night, the moon settled across the floor in a soft, steady glow that felt almost deliberate. A small balcony extended just beyond the glass doors. On warmer nights, I would sit there in the dark. Outside, the air felt different. The weight that pressed in from the interior loosened its hold, and the silence no longer felt as though it were closing around me. I could breathe without listening for something just out of sight. Sometimes I watched the carp in the pond below. They moved slowly through the water, their pale bodies slipping beneath the surface and reappearing without sound, their movements steady and undisturbed, unbothered, unaware. It was nearly 2 months before anything changed. I had been sitting on the balcony as I often did, the night settling in around me in its usual quiet, when I noticed the light. It was faint at first, a soft glow at the far edge of the courtyard, near where the west wing began. It flickered once against the stone, before steadying, warm and unmistakably real. I straightened slowly, my fingers tightening slightly around the railing. The house had never shown light at night. Not once. For a moment I told myself it was nothing. A reflection perhaps. A trick of the moon catching at the windows at the right angle. But the glow did not shift. It remained, steady, waiting. I stayed where I was, watching, as the last traces of daylight drained from the sky, and the darkness settled fully across the courtyard. Only when there was no longer any doubt, no lingering light to explain it away, did I rise from my seat. The corridor leading to the west wing felt different from the rest of the house. Colder, narrower. The air there did not move. I paused at the threshold, my hand hovering near the wall, as if expecting to feel something beneath it. There was nothing, only the quiet, stretching forward into the dimness ahead. Then I stepped through. At the far end, a door stood open. Light spilled from within, warm, steady, unmistakably present in a house that had never allowed such a thing before. I crossed the distance slowly, my pulse loud in my ears, each step feeling more deliberate than the last. The room beyond was lit by candles. They lined the walls, their flames steady and undisturbed, casting long, shifting shadows across dark wood and heavy velvet. The furniture looked used, not abandoned, not preserved, but recently occupied. A glass sat on a side table, half filled. A coat rested over the back of a chair, as though it had been set aside only moments ago. Someone was there. The voice came from behind me. I turned sharply, my breath catching before I could stop it. He stood in the doorway. For a moment, neither of us moved. He looked as though he belonged to the room, composed, still, dressed in dark fabric that absorbed the candlelight rather than reflecting it. His presence did not disturb the space. It completed it. His gaze settled on me, steady and unreadable, though there was something beneath it. Not anger, something closer to surprise. "You," I began, my voice faltering as I tried to find the shape of the thought. "I didn't think anyone was here," he finished, his tone even. "Yes." He stepped forward, unhurried, as though my presence had not unsettled him at all. "It is sunset," he said, glancing briefly toward the window, where the last trace of light had already faded from the sky. "You arrived at the edge of it." "I saw the light," I said, the explanation sounding thinner the moment I spoke it. It would have been wiser to ignore it. There was no reprimand in his voice, only certainty. After a moment, his gaze shifted, not softer, but less guarded. "You are the one maintaining the house," he said. "Yes. You have done so adequately." Relief slipped through me before I could stop it. "Then, you don't need me anymore since you're back in town?" Something in his expression changed at that. "No," he said. "I require someone during the day." "For what?" I asked. He held my gaze for a moment, as though considering how much to say. "Work," he replied. It was not an answer. After that night, the house changed. Not in the way it had before, when the darkness pressed inward, and the silence felt alive with something unseen. That presence did not disappear, but it shifted, easing its hold just enough that I no longer felt the need to escape it, because I was no longer alone. I did not see him every night, but I began to stay awake for him. At first, it was without intention. I would sit on the balcony longer than I meant to, watching the courtyard, waiting for the faint glow to appear again in the west wing. And when it did, I would go. Sometimes he was already there. Sometimes he appeared only after I had entered, his presence unfolding in the room so quietly that I never saw him arrive. "You should not make a habit of this," he said one evening, watching as I rested my hand against the back of a chair. "Of what?" I asked. "Coming here." I glanced at him. "You haven't told me not to." "I have told you to mind the hours." "And I am," I said, my voice softer now. "It's after sunset." His gaze lingered on me, steady and searching. "You misunderstand," he said. For a moment, I thought he would refuse. Then, after a quiet pause, he said, "There are parts of this house that do not belong to you." The words were calm, but something in them settled deeper than a warning. I tried for a time not to think about it. The days made it easy. They unfolded in the same quiet pattern as before. The cleaning service moving through the rooms with practiced efficiency. The gardeners tending the grounds without ever lingering. The carp drifting beneath the surface of the courtyard pond as if nothing in the world had changed. The house in daylight remained what it had always been. Still, orderly, and untouched by anything that suggested a living presence. But at night, something in me shifted. I began to listen for him without meaning to. Not for footsteps, he never made any, but for the subtle change in the air. The way the silence settled differently when he was near. It was no longer the suffocating quiet that had driven me to my room in those first weeks. It had weight still, but it no longer pressed against me. It steadied me. It drew me, and more than anything, it made me curious. The door to the west wing stood closed that morning, just as it always had. Nothing about it appeared unusual. No sound came from beyond it. No light leaked beneath the frame. The house, in its daylight state, offered no sign that anything existed there at all. I paused at the threshold longer than I should have, my hand hovering just above the handle. He had told me to mind the hours. He had not told me why. The quiet stretched around me, patient and unyielding, as if waiting to see what I would do. My fingers lifted, hesitated, then closed around the handle before I could convince myself otherwise. The door opened without resistance. The corridor beyond was dimmer than I expected. The daylight did not reach as far here, leaving the far end in a muted shadow that softened the edges of everything it touched. Still, nothing appeared out of place. The furniture was arranged as it had been at night. The walls unchanged, the doors along the hall closed and orderly. It looked lived in, but not lived. I stepped inside, my movements instinctively quieter, as though I had entered a space that did not belong to me. It was not fear that slowed me, but something closer to hesitation, an awareness that I was crossing into a part of the house that had been deliberately kept separate. The deeper I went, the narrower the corridor seemed to become. The air cooled, losing even the faint warmth of the rest of the house. It settled against my skin in a way that felt untouched, unmoving, as if it had not been disturbed in hours. At the very end of the hall, I noticed a door I did not remember seeing before. It was smaller than the others, plain, unmarked. I stopped in front of it, my hand resting lightly against the wood. For a moment, I considered turning back. Then I pushed it open. The room beyond was bare. No windows, no decoration, no sign that anyone had ever occupied it, except for the bed. It stood at the center, draped in heavy dark fabric. Thick curtains hung from its frame, drawn completely closed, concealing whatever lay within. The stillness inside the room was absolute. I stepped forward slowly, my breath quiet, my fingers brushing against the edge of the curtain. The fabric was cool beneath my touch, heavier than I expected. I hesitated for only a moment, then I pulled it aside. He lay there, perfectly still, too still. His skin was pale against the dark sheets, his hands resting neatly at his sides, his body unmoving in a way that felt unnatural, even for sleep. There was no rise of breath, no subtle shift of muscle beneath the skin. He looked less like a man at rest and more like something preserved. For a brief, disorienting moment, I thought. His eyes opened. They fixed on mine instantly. There was no confusion in them, no lingering haze of waking, only awareness, sharp, immediate, and focused entirely on me. I couldn't move. Something in the air changed. It tightened, as though the room itself had drawn inward around us. His lips parted, then pulled back, not into a smile, but into something that bared the truth of what he was. His teeth lengthened before my eyes, the edges too sharp, too deliberate to belong to anything human. They caught the dim light in a pale, unmistakable flash, and for the first time since I had arrived at the estate, I felt something close to real fear. "Leave," he said. The word came low, strained, as though forced through something he was holding back. I remained where I was, rooted to the spot, his gaze darkened. "Now," he repeated, the restraint in it fraying at the edges. That was what broke the moment. I stumbled back, the curtain falling from my hand as I turned, my pulse surging so violently, it drowned out everything else. I didn't look at him again. I didn't stop to think. I ran. Through the corridor, my footsteps are loud now against the floor. Through the open door of the west wing, down the main hall, past the rooms that had once felt merely quiet and now seemed to watch me pass. I pushed through the front door and out into the open air, the sudden space hitting me all at once as I kept moving. My breath uneven, my chest tight. The gravel bit into the soles of my shoes as I ran down the drive, not slowing until the gates came into view. Only then did I stop. I bent forward, bracing my hands against my knees, trying to pull air back into my lungs, my heart still racing, as if it had not yet realized I was no longer in danger. He did not follow. When I finally straightened, the world had not changed. The lawn crew was still there, moving steadily across the grounds, their machines humming softly in the distance. One of them glanced toward me, his expression unreadable, as his gaze lingered for a brief moment. Then he nodded. Just once, not surprised, not concerned, as if he had been expecting this, as if it had happened before. I stood there a little longer, waiting for something, panic perhaps, or the urge to leave entirely. It did not come. Slowly, my breathing steadied, and when I turned back toward the house, it was not with dread, only with understanding. I stayed, not because it was safe, but because leaving felt incomplete. I did not go to him that night, nor the next. I kept to my room, to the balcony, sitting in the dark as I had before, my gaze drawn again and again to the west wing. The house had shifted back into something heavier without him, the silence pressing closer, the shadows stretching longer across the floors. I found myself waiting, not for the light, for him. When I finally returned, it was later than I had gone before. The candles were already lit. He stood near the window, his back turned slightly, the faint glow of flame tracing the line of his shoulders. He did not move until I stepped fully into the room. Then he turned. For a moment, he said nothing. His gaze settled on me, steady, searching, as though confirming something he had not expected to see. "You returned," he said at last, his voice quieter than I had ever heard it. I stepped further inside, closing the distance I had once kept between us. "Yes. I assumed you would leave," he said. "I thought about it," I admitted, my hands folding loosely in front of me. Something shifted in his expression at that. Subtle, but unmistakable. Not relief. Not quite. Something deeper. "You understand what I am," he said. "Yes." "And you remain." "Yes." He stepped closer, stopping just within reach, though he did not touch me. "You will not become as I am," he said. "I will not allow it." "I know. You will die." "I know." The words did not feel heavy when I said them, only true. His jaw tightened slightly. "And I will not stop it." "I'm not asking you to," I replied, my voice steady. The silence that followed was not empty. It settled between us, thick with everything neither of us needed to say. I took a small step forward. "I'm choosing to stay," I said, "with you." He held my gaze for a long moment, as though weighing the words, testing them for doubt. He would not find any. At last, he reached for my hand. His touch was cool, firm, without hesitation. That night, I did not return to my room. I stayed with him, letting the hours pass without counting them, the quiet between us no longer something to endure, but something shared. We spoke in low voices, and sometimes not at all, his presence steady beside me, close enough that I no longer questioned it. At some point, without meaning to, I leaned into that stillness and let my eyes close, my hands still resting in his, as sleep took me where I sat. When I woke, the house had returned to its daylight silence, and I was alone in the great hall, morning light stretching across the floor. A small note rested beside me. I picked it up, my fingers brushing the paper before unfolding it, and read the words written in his careful hand. "See you tonight."